Welcome to the 2024 Summer Fall E&P Study Group. This is week 4, and today we're going to be finishing up one of the sections on types and features. There are a couple of more smaller sections to the types and features area, but we'll go through those elsewhere. They just belong elsewhere as far as I'm concerned. We will not be covering radio today. Today will be a shorter session as I have a prior commitment that I will need to head to. So we will do the types and features, and students make it out a little early today. So as usual, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have found this video on YouTube, we are currently live in the March 8th, 2024 to June 21st, 2024 study group. If you are watching this video in that time frame, you can go ahead and sign up for the actual study group, and you will gain access to the Google group as well as the calendar invite to join us live on Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you are watching this after June 21st and you're planning on taking the summer or fall E&P exam, and you would like access to all of the materials that we give out in the Google group, such as the PDFs, the MP3s, any additional documents that I decide to send out, the recordings of the videos, as well as some practice exams, you can go ahead and go to that same website, onscenefirst.com/training/study E&P, or scan the QR code there and request access to the previous study group. The dates and everything will be on that page, and they will be updated. If you are finding this and there is not a study group currently scheduled, usually the website will identify when the next live study group is going to be, etc. But if you want to be notified when we do determine those dates at a later time, or just want to keep up with my shenanigans, make sure you head over to onscenefirst.com and register for our newsletter and updates. Want to say thank you to our premier study group sponsor, Rapid SOS. They have been sponsoring our study group since the beginning, which was mid-2021. So we are beyond appreciative for them doing that. And if you haven't checked out what they're doing, shame. If you're in the 911 space, you should know about Rapid SOS, just saying. We do offer a few scholarships. I recommend getting your scholarships in, before the due date, but I'll give you that date on just the next slide. But I want to say thank you to those sponsors. So with Rapid SOS's premier sponsor, they are awarding 2 of our scholarships. Responders Consulting Services is sponsoring a scholarship, as well as LB Comms is sponsoring 2. So we have a total of 5 scholarships that we are able to give out this session, and they will be awarded for the summer E&P exam. And so if you want to submit for that, just please check out the criteria. There is specific criteria. This sponsorship scholarship is specifically for the folks that their agency does not cover the exam. Before you submit, double check with your decision makers to make sure that they don't offer to pay for the exam. We've had a few in the past, actually several, where when we go to confirm with the decision maker, they say that their agency does cover it. So before you submit, just make sure that that they're not going to cover it, and let them know they'll be receiving an email from me to verify that as well. But make sure that you get it in before April 26th, 2024. And that's just in a few weeks. I want to share the On Scene First National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week celebration QR code with you, or you can head over to the website at a later time. And make sure, if you are a communication center professional in the 911 space, you register. I have a ton of sponsors this year. I'm wicked excited to be able to give away as many items as I'm going to have, thanks to all of the sponsors. Our hero level sponsors are CCS, Communication Center Specialists, and Zybex. And we have many, many more that I'll go over in that time frame. But make sure you head over there and just register. I do ask for 2 email addresses because I've run into problems with getting in contact with the winners to confirm their address that they've listed. And I confirm them, even though I ask for them, I still confirm them, because by the time we have the event and give out the prizes, folks have left agencies, they have moved, they want it to go to their house versus their work. So even though I do ask for the address, I make sure that we verify that. So check that out and make sure you share it with your team too. OnSceneFirst.com store/store will lead you to our distribution and partner page through Squad Life. If you are looking for any type of hero swag, you can head over there and use the code NPSTW. And that code will be good until the end of Telecommunicator Week. So it'll be good until the April 20th. And then Mandy had mentioned she got some poem cards today. I would like to provide some telecommunicator poems for your agency. If you would like them for Telecommunicator Week, I highly recommend you scan that QR code there. Head over to the Squad Life partner page. It's at the top there as well. But they are actually taking over shipping them out for me. So the cards are free. So you can get as many cards as you need for your agency. Just fill it out appropriately. I think there's packages of 25 and 50. So if you have 150 folks, just select the 50 package 3 times. And then there'll be a small fee for shipping. So if you don't mind paying the shipping to get those cards for your folks, it's really not a whole lot. So I definitely want to offer that to you guys, and many folks are really loving those poems for their folks. So that's that. So with that, we're going to jump into our presentation for today. The stuff that we're going to go over today is, every once in a while, I'll say this: there isn't ways to make some of these things entertaining or come up with, fancy, easy ways to remember things. It's more to help folks get everything organized in a logical sequence with the definitions kind of right in front of you. And anytime I have something to add, this particular section, like I said, it's not going to be a overly long session today, but it's a lot of definitions and just understanding what the technology is in our centers and different types of PSAPs, et cetera. So this is a lot of stuff that you probably already know, or you should know. Just a few things in there that I know some folks may not have ever seen or understand how it works. So let's get started. So as far as the PSAP types go, there are 4 definition typed PSAP. So you have your primary. Your primary PSAP is a PSAP to which 911 calls are routed directly from the 911 control office or our central office. The secondary PSAP is where the calls are transferred to from the primary PSAP. The alternate, if you remember last week or the week before, my weeks are all running together. We talked about alternate PSAPs or alternate routing and default routing. And so an alternate PSAP, just as I said in my definitions, is the alternate is the understudy. We know who that is. That's the agency that is going to receive your overflow, your calls if the call cannot be routed to your 911 center for any reason, but it has already been identified. It's pre-designated as your specific agency's alternate PSAP. The default PSAP is a PSAP that receives 911 calls when they don't know where to route. Some do identify a default PSAP based on certain criteria, but for definition purposes, the default PSAP is the one that is going to be kind of the catch-all for the, as I call them, the land of the misfit 911 calls. They kind of catch that call when it doesn't know where to go. And this is kind of what it looks like. Just sometimes folks need a visual where the 911 call gets placed. It'll go to the central station, central office, control center. That call will get to the place where it's going to decide where it goes based on policy, routing, etc. If the call doesn't know where to go, it's going to default to a default PSAP. If it knows where it's going to hit that primary PSAP. It's going to head towards the primary PSAP. And if for whatever reason that primary PSAP is not able to receive the calls, then it's going to be bounced to that alternate PSAP. And then if the primary PSAP is not going to be processing the call and it needs to move over to a secondary, which may be a fire or EMS agency to deliver, to dispatch that call based on the discipline of that service. So majority of the time it's a law enforcement agency, not always, but a lot of times the primary is a law enforcement agency that then sends it to a fire or EMS, or it might be a county agency that sends it to a city or a university, etc. So there's no rhyme or reason as to what determines who the primary PSAP is going to be, but just know the primary PSAP is theoretically that first stop if everything's working the way that it should. There are two different PSAP. Well, there's three different types of PSAPs. But here we're going to talk about two, and then later we will talk about the third. So the two that we're going to talk about here is just a public safety dispatch point. They have the ability to receive the call, but they don't have the access to display Annie and Allie information. And it's crazy. We still have some agencies that just get the call transferred to them, and they don't have any type of way of seeing the Annie Alley information that is presented or any type of mapping. So I put the little caveman there because it just seemed appropriate. So public safety dispatch point it's just that they're going to receive the call, but they're not necessarily considered an answering point. Answering point being they get the call with all of the demographics, et cetera, that are available. Then a legacy PSAP is a PSAP that cannot process I3 defined interfaces. So we're going to talk about I3 stuff a little bit later. That's going to be your next generation 911 phone systems. And our legacy PSAPs they still require the use of CAMA trunks or ISDN trunks. And we'll talk specifically about those. We did touch on CAMA, meaning, and the CAMA trunks, as I mentioned, were previously originally put in place to keep track of toll calls and like the toll billing when the call went out of our particular service area. So that's a legacy PSAP. And again, we still have some agencies that are still fully legacy environments. We have single jurisdiction PSAP. So this is a map of Massachusetts, and it identifies a couple of different types of PSAPs. But for this particular slide, the single jurisdiction, it is a PSAP that serves a specific jurisdiction. On this map, all of the colored communities, they are part of a regional or consolidated 911 center. All of the other ones that do not have colors, they are standalone PSAPs that only support a single jurisdiction, and those agencies may uh, service police, fire, and EMS, maybe just police, maybe just fire. But it's not unusual to find several single jurisdiction PSAPs in a single county or state. And I know I put the Massachusetts map up here because there was a day that every community had their own PSAP. And so we've done a lot of work on regionalization and consolidating. And we still have, as you can see, many that are still standalone and secondaries, etc. We have single agency versus multiple agencies. So a single agency is an agency that dispatches only for one discipline in one jurisdiction. So this particular agency may only dispatch for police in this particular community, meaning the other calls get transferred out to be dispatched by another entity. And then multi-agency is handling dispatching for multiple services, police, fire, and EMS, and can be multiple jurisdictions, usually a combination of cities and counties all together. Then we have our consolidated agencies, also called our regional centers, and they are a consolidated PSAP that is a facility where one or more public safety agency chooses to operate as a single entity. And we have lots of those, lots of them across the United States. Consolidated PSAPs may serve one or more jurisdictions and are usually formed through agreements between all of the participating parties. The management structure of a consolidated PSAP varies significantly. Some consolidated PSAPs are under the direction of one police chief, a fire chief. Some are under the city manager. Some are under a board. And then some are standalone private centers. And I'll tell you about those in just a second. Some municipalities design a management structure such that the PSAP director is a civilian employee who reports to a board of directors. So there is no rhyme or reason. One of the things that I learned at Rapid SOS, my good friend Reinhard Eckel had said it all the time. He said, if you've been in one 911 center, you've been in one 911 center, because I don't think there's any center across the US that actually does things exactly the same. There are so many different moving pieces, moving parts, how we do things, etc. And there's no one way that's better than the other. Every type of PSAP situation has its pros and has its cons. We also have co-located, which I've seen in places. There are, again, there's benefits and then there's challenges to those situations. But co-located involves separate agencies or agency divisions that share a communication center facility. Within the structure's interior, they're separated by walls, pods, but they each have their own staff. They may have their own CAD. They may have a merged CAD, but they have their own set of protocols. And an example is Cincinnati Police and Cincinnati Fire. They're all in the same room. They're just separated a little bit, but two totally different entities living in the same house. And then this, the co-located dispatch facility, the county of San Luis Obispo. This is quite an old kind of screen capture. I'm not sure if they actually move forward with doing this, but it was basically describing how it was done. In this, the co-located dispatch will be located at the County Operations Center off Highway 1. When complete, the facility will replace two antiquated and overcrowded dispatch agencies. Hold on. I hear the dog barking. and they were going to be putting um, the law enforcement and the fire, even though two separate agencies, sheriff's dispatch, they were going to be putting several different dispatch agencies in one location for cost savings and etc. So that's co-located. Then you have a private PSAP. Until I started working with, and I have Litchfield County Dispatch in Connecticut listed there. There are several more of them, but I'm just making reference to them because they were probably the first that I experienced working with that was a private entity. And it's different, right? So a lot of times we are governmental entities in the PSAP, but a private PSAP is a public safety answering point that's operated by non-public safety entities. They are functional alternative and have adequate means of signaling and directing responses to emergencies. So they can get access to the same technology and information. It's just run a little bit differently. Private PSAPs are an adjunct to public safety response and such provide incident reporting to public safety emergency responses through their local requirements. And they may also serve as a central station, which is alarm monitoring, private security, call taking, and dispatch for other things. So I think a private dispatch, a private PSAP, does have a little more wiggle room as to what they are capable of providing communities. They can make decisions without it having to go to a major vote of the community, etc. But I also think that there are times where it can be challenging because if they are not considered, quote, a law enforcement type agency, they might miss out on some things there as well. Then we have a virtual PSAP. Now, with the virtual PSAP, I don't know, private PSAP, like a college PSAP. Yes, Derek, I do think that a college PSAP could be considered private unless it's a state university. If it's a state university and it's the law enforcement falls under governmental, I think they're going to be very different. But I do know of some that would definitely be considered a private PSAP, especially if it's a private college, etc. So they have the ability to answer the 911 calls and such, but they might not fall into some same criteria. The virtual PSAP, I remember getting a copy of these pictures when I was doing an article in 2020 when COVID hit. I was still at Rapid SOS, and the folks in Arlington and Alexandria, Virginia, they implemented virtual PSAP, call taking, call handling, etc. And it was just really cool to see this moving forward. I do know that there have been several agencies since, but a virtual PSAP is an operational model directly enabled through next generation 911 features and or network hosted PSAP equipment in which telecommunicators are geographically dispersed rather than working from the same physical location. Now, with that said, it doesn't necessarily mean that a virtual PSAP is going to be in someone's home. I know that there were also some folks at I think it was Lake County in Illinois. They had to move out of their PSAP because of some COVID issues, went to my dog just scared the bejesus out of me. He must have been laying outside my door. So if you just saw me jump out of my skin, that was funny. Nothing like a compromised nervous system. My daughter's pulling in, so she'll be able to let him out. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're sitting in their houses. It depends on where they are. So and I'm pretty sure it was Lake County, they had to move to a backup PSAP, or actually somebody else's PSAP, but they were able to log into all of their systems. Hold on. Let me just open that door. All right. Sorry about that. The chaos, the chaos. So yeah, so they basically were able to go over to another agency, just log into all of their things. And if I'm restarting, I apologize. That there was just a lot of stimulation that just took place. Matt Adams. My old agency had a private ambulance service that ran our 911 EMS calls, and they were the secondary PSAT for our county. Yeah, yeah. So definitely ambulance companies, they would be considered a secondary. When we have an agency that originally receives the call and then sends it off to someone else, that's going to be categorized as a secondary. The virtual PSAPs, they allow for remote access to the PSAP applications by the dispersed telecommunicators. It requires an appropriate network connection, security, and workstation equipment at the remote location. So you can see these folks. These were they were Alexandria folks, I think. I think it was Alexandria. That had they had go boxes basically where they would move all of that stuff over there. A lot of things had to be put in place for this particular thing to take place. And I know there's a lot of other agencies that are doing it, and it's beneficial. There are pieces that are beneficial. The virtual workplace may be a logical combination of physical PSAPs and alternative work environments, such as a satellite facility, etc. And they're connected via our IP connectivity. Now, with that comes needing, unlimited power supplies, etc. But I think these are more for emergency type situations. I don't see people working from home on a regular basis in the 911 space. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me if you guys are doing that. I know I see in social media groups every once in a while, somebody will say, hey, I saw somebody, working remotely. I don't necessarily know if that's going to take place with emergency call handling, because we do need things that have things that need to have some oversight. So, Melissa, we have a PSAP in Washington State that has someone working remotely full time in North Carolina. That's really cool. Melissa, do you know if they're handling emergency calls or is it non-emergency type calls? 911 calls, really? Well, I would love some more information on that. So if you could, if maybe you could shoot me an email, or anybody watching this, if I would definitely love to peel back Kitsap. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised I hadn't heard about that. I'm familiar with that agency, but yeah, definitely virtual PSAPs are becoming a thing, as are many things in our space. But if you want to check out the article that I wrote way back in my dispatch, my Rapid SOS days, you can click on this link, and it's basically the article talking to the folks in Arlington and Alexandria when they kind of launched that particular. And this call taker right here is one of the Lake County, Illinois folks. So that article is there. And then there's a virtual consolidation listed as well. This is a separate PSAP that is sharing equipment, software, infrastructure in a host remote environment while maintaining its localized staffing and management. And to be honest, I visualize this as being something like Massachusetts, where you have our state 911 is the hosting entity of all of our 911 equipment. So they have their infrastructure, their software, their equipment, their servers, etc. And it's all hosted remotely, but the entire state. So I would consider this as a kind of a virtual consolidation in a sense. So Karen, my old agency has a team of remote workers handling admin calls and then transferring them to transferring them to the center if needed. Yeah, we are getting to a place where things are able to be done in a more remote environment. Are there challenges? I bet. Are there things that we may not be thinking about and we'll have to come back and rethink them? Absolutely. But we need to move forward with the times. As far as PSAP equipment goes, again, these are going to be basic definitions and terminology. So Annie and Allie controllers, I put them on the same page because they kind of do the same thing. I have the secret decoder ring there because that's really what this is doing. So an Annie and an Allie controller is the equipment which processes the 911 call and the data that's associated with it and provides control functions for receiving and interpreting the information in the Annie and the Allie databases. Now, I know I said this last week. We talked about parsing out of information. So there's a lot of times that a phone number is parsed out, it's taken out of its, little cocoon, it's wrapped up in some data, it's sent somewhere else, it's decoded, and then it brings back something else. And that's what the Annie and the Allie controllers do. An Annie controller is a standalone CPE component that provides the Annie decoding and function key controls for the 911 services. An Annie controller is installed between the telephone lines and the 911 system. And this equipment receives the Annie signal from the central office. So it makes it so it's understandable by the system that it's coming in contact with. The Allie controller provides access to the name and the address data associated with the telephone number that's calling 911. And that's if the name is available. We're talking landline type situations. The Annie and Allie controllers, though, are no longer needed in a true next generation 911 environment. So when we talk more about next generation 911, I try to share what pieces in the new system replace the pieces in the old system. So I will probably do that then. The Annie and the Allie displays are just that. Now, remember, we talked about Annie and Allie, Big Al, Little Annie. So Big Al is all of the information. Little Annie is just the phone number. But the display is just that. It's where it gets displayed. So I remember, so this was our Vesta 911 system. And so here's our Allie display. I don't, however, have an image of the Annie display that was almost directly right underneath it, where it was just the phone number that was displayed there. So I don't need to read those definitions. They're there for you if you need them. Computer telephony integration, CTI. It's also called computer telephone integration, and it's literally just that. When you look at the definition, it's a term that can be used to describe any technology that enables computers to interact with telephones. So when we go back to when we moved from our Mars 911 phone system equipment. Does anybody else remember the Mars equipment? I mentioned it when I was in Florida this week in one of the classes, and nobody there remembered it. So I don't know if it was a Massachusetts technology or, but I was referring to the old Mars system where you answered the 911 call and you had to hit the Annie store recall button to make sure that it saved the Annie, to save the phone number. And then when you went to call the caller back, you had to get an open line and hit the Annie store recall button and dial from there. And I just remember not hitting it one time and that was a mistake. But does anyone else remember the Mars equipment? When we moved from the Mars equipment, we moved over to the Vesta system. That was our first CTI. It was the first where we had computer monitors, we had a server on site, and the phone wasn't actually attached to a foam. It was just there. But that's what that situation is. And then we have intelligent workstations, which is a computer-based 911 answering position equipped that includes that um, telephony integration. And this is the picture I stole from the Zybex folks. Oh, Pete, yes. So Pete mentioned in the chat to me, it looks like it just went to the host and panelists. I missed the 9 button on Mars. So for those of you that did not use the Mars equipment, we had a button, the 9 button, that when you press that 9 button, it would basically be a recording, and it said in a roundabout way, "Hey, knucklehead, this is not an emergency and you need to call the business line." Maybe we need to bring that back. But this is a Zybex console. The intelligent workstation allows all of those pieces to kind of work together, and they are one of our hero partners for our event. So I stole one of their pictures. Call handling equipment. It is also called customer premise equipment when it is on premise. It's the equipment installed today. It's usually VoIP enabled and has the ability to integrate voice and data. There's separate Annie and Ally controllers have been replaced by these systems, incorporated in some agencies, not in all agencies, an ACD environment, an automatic call distribution and computer telephony integration. And I'll talk more about the ACD environment in just a second. The call handling function may reside in a VoIP MLTS or equivalent. So basically, when you're looking at call handling equipment today, it is considered it's all VoIP. I don't know of anybody that is using anything other than VoIP, which would have been kind of that Mars equipment that is not a computer-based system. So the majority of our CHEs or our CPEs are VoIP environments today. More on the call handling equipment. There's a couple of different types. So the first one that you saw, that's on premise. Everything's on site. We then have the ability to have a host or a remote type customer handling equipment or customer, we call it a customer premise. It's not always on premise when it's hosted and remote, but this is where the call handling equipment can serve multiple PSAPs. Again, this is kind of like the state of Massachusetts or maybe a consolidated agency, not a consolidated agency, mostly like a state-run entity. Communication circuits connect the PSAP positions or workstations back to the host controller equipment. It offers economic advantages. So when you have that type of remote system, it's much easier to have everything in one place, working under one company. Obviously, the bigger the project, sometimes the better the pricing we get. And some of these host remote can be more than just the call handling solutions. It could be CADs, recorders, record management systems, mobile data systems in the vehicle. But everybody in the area using the same thing. Call handling as a service, CHAAS. I do feel like this was identified on the exam. In the body of knowledge, it is called call handling as a service, CHAAS. However, in the manual, it is identified as premise equipment as a service. So just to kind of put that into perspective, this is a solution. It's an optional service available to any PSAP seeking to migrate from on-site or hosted solutions to a cloud-based solution. Okay. It can provide both on-site and cloud-based simultaneously. There are advantages, which minimal hardware, software to manage, which benefits disaster recovery, social distancing, rapid updates, etc. The disadvantage is the perceived loss of control at the local level. So we do have a lot of call handling things that are becoming cloud-based. Some folks are nervous about that. Some folks are very open to it. But just know that it's called two different things, but the underlying mindset is there are benefits to doing it this way, and it is the equipment is still on premise, but all of the data, etc., is hosted in a cloud. And then some of the other PSAP equipment that they want you to be aware of is the uninterrupted power supplies. Hold on one second. Okay. The uninterrupted power supplies, UPSs, these provide the ability for attached equipment to continue operating if commercially provided power is uninterrupted, is interrupted. It also protects against commercial outages, lightning strikes, brownouts, etc., and those spikes. It usually is a surge protector. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. I just have to take care of this. I just want to make something clear is even though it's a lot of folks misunderstand an uninterrupted power supply and an unlimited power supply. UPSs actually go down. Okay. They do run out of power eventually. We had that situation happen in our agency. Just hold on one second. I have to pause for a second, and I'll explain when I come back for a minute. So I just have to pause for one second. Hi, I'm back. So ironically, I thought my daughter was here, so there was noise happening above my head. So I had texted her to stop making the noise above my head because I didn't want it coming across. She said, "It's not me. I'm not home." So then I texted my husband thinking it was my husband. He says, "I don't know what you're talking about." So I just had a panic moment that there was somebody in my house. It was my daughter's boyfriend getting his National Guard stuff out of the closet upstairs. This is a session. There's been a lot going on. All right. So let's get back to business. So the UPS, it's uninterrupted, not unlimited. We have electrical generators that are part of the system. They provide power in the event of a commercial power loss. They rely on either natural gas, diesel, and gasoline. It is recommended that there's routine testing, which is critical, and there should be an indicator light or an alarm in your 911 center to make sure that it's going to work in the event of an emergency. We had a situation where we had a significant power outage and our generator did not kick on. It was a very quiet moment in dispatch for a little bit. System controllers, they control and monitor 911 calls from the controller to the 911 center. I don't have an image of those. That's why there's a big fat question mark there. I don't quite know what they look like, but they are part of there. And then gateways we're going to talk more about gateways where we have in the 911 system, there are, especially moving towards from legacy to next generation. We'll talk specifically about the different types of gateways, but they are a piece of networking hardware used in telecommunications for telecommunications networks that allow data to flow from one discrete network to the other. So the reason why I kind of have this image is because we want to make sure that the information is going from one place to another is secured information, but sometimes it has to change. So there are legacy network gateways, meaning if I'm going from a legacy network into a next generation environment, the information from one place to another is going to have to move through some type of network. So there are several types of gateways. We will identify those later, but just know that gateways are distinct from routers or switches, and that they communicate using more than one protocol to connect multiple networks. So it's kind of this interlocking piece that sits between one type of system and another that allows them to work together. Okay, so this is what it's doing. It's taking our legacy type stuff and it's allowing it to connect to a more robust system, and it sits in between the two. An ACD, an automated call distributor. This system allows call routing utilities for incoming calls and can evenly route calls by a predictive dialer to the next available agent or other set of parameters. I will tell you, I saw a system in New Mexico. So John Barney's agency in New Mexico a couple of weeks ago thought this was just wow. So we have our ACD environments. So I've seen several different types of ACD environments where the parameters are set, where they kind of rotate between callers based on whether or not their status has them ready. But at John's agency, what they did is they are automatically distributed and it just pops in their ear. So it's not a matter of them having to actually answer the call. They get a tone and boop, it's in their ear. It's not a matter of them actually answering the call. And so I would love to know if anybody else is doing that as well. But the agencies, from what I'm seeing, most of them, so you guys, yeah, so you use ACD, but how are you using it? Are you using it where it's automatic answer in the ear, where it's just automatically popping in their ear? Or do your folks have the yes, the call goes to the particular person, but they have to manually accept the call and answer it. Kathy, so we do it where it automatically pops in your ear. I would love to hear more about that. I know that that's probably improving call answer times, but I'd be a little nervous as to if you're mid sentence and then all of a sudden there's somebody in your ear. Is that a challenge? Automatically in your ear, yeah. So ACD types, there are different parameters. You can send, you can say a percentage go to this caller, this caller, this caller. There are different ways that the ACD environment can be established. However, it's all based on the agency. The call taker hears their own voice. Okay, so the call taker hears their own voice pre-recorded stating 911. What's the location of your emergency? Stephanie, we have a ding noise that comes when you're getting a call. We have a quick beep, and you can tell you're on the phone. Okay, good, good. I had a feel like I just had this weird feeling there's just going to be somebody talking in your ear. Recording equipment, again, by definition, this is how most 911 communications are logged. And the recordings provide the records needed in many court cases. Most voice lines, including 911 and admin lines, are recorded. They're usually retained for a fixed amount of time. Instant call recorders, IRRs, are located at the call taker's station. What I will tell you is what you hear in your ear and what's presented on the recording are often two very different things. Some PSAPs are also using screen recording as part of their training, quality assurance, and quality improvement programs. And recording can protect both the caller and the call taker. Okay. Computer aided dispatch. Most PSAPs utilize CAD to automate the call taking and dispatching process. It is a computerized record of the incidents that are called in or processed through the 911 center, whether through the 911, through radio, via text message where applicable. Most are still using server-based, but we are seeing a move towards the call handling as a service type situation where it is cloud-based. And CADs may also interface with a third-party entity, such as the NCIC, DMV, or RMV, depending on your situation. Record management systems, RMSs, they're computerized records and reports handling by the agencies dispatched from their communication center. They are also an extension of a CAD. It's nice when they are together because they can pull information from one place to another. Most include demographical and personal data such as fingerprints, mugshots, and other related images. Most RMSs solutions hook and related data into a data management system. So data management systems, RMSs, they usually pull data in from lots of different locations. In the book, in the BOK, it is called management information systems. So by definition, on the body of knowledge, it is identified as management call information systems, MIS. In the book, it's record management systems. And as a whole, we understand it as record management systems. Mobile data systems, MDS. They're also called MDCs, MDTs. These are the units that are in the vehicle. They too allow access to NCIC and FBI type information. They're usually more rugged than your traditional laptops because they're out in the field and they can take a beating. And they use what is often referred to as a public safety broadband network, PSBN. They aim to combine both mobile broadband and public safety reliability and ruggedness to the network in which they are utilized. AVL, not everybody has AVL. It would be nice to have it, but automatic vehicle location. It works with mobile data systems to allow the vehicles to be tracked in dispatch, or wherever else they need to be tracked. And they can be used for specific zone dispatching. In other words, this is where the vehicle is. This is the most appropriate response. So some agencies are moving to that type of dispatch. Very interesting concept. Mapping in GIS, which we'll get into a little bit more later, is geographically seeing the caller's location on a digital map. Wireless 911 calls require GIS or digital mapping software to properly display and provide latitude and longitude, or the identified tower in which the call is being routed from. Telecommunications deaf for device for the deaf, TDD and TTY. So it is recommended that you click on the link that you see there, nina.org/page/guide_2_ADA. That is listed in your manual. I recommend a run through of that particular information. I also recommend, just in general, looking through the APCO NINA ANSI standard for the minimum training standards for TTY and TDD use in public safety communication centers. I know that we do still have some challenges with folks when they're supposed to check for TTY, when they're not supposed to check for TTY, the process in which to check for TTY, how to engage, how to disengage, and folks not understanding that when you are engaged in a TTY call session, the call is actually, the audio in the call is actually auto attenuated. So it is lowered. And so these devices are specifically for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And Title II, which we'll talk more about the ADA when we talk about legislation, it basically says that, you know, anyone that is deaf or hard of hearing has the ability to access 911 as somebody who is not deaf or hard of hearing would. And that means that we need to be doing more to make sure we're accommodating that demographic. And even though they are moving away from the TTY and the TDD, because they're using more text to 911, real-time text, as well as relay services, it is still important to understand how the TTY technology is built. Time synchronization, basically the net clock that sits in your 911 center. Time synchronization can be used to put all of your equipment on one particular accurate and connected synchronized time. So that means that your radios, your recordings, your call handling, your CAD, they're all on the same time synchronization, as it should be. Not every agency does this, but it should be, because if I have a radio transmission and I have to, well, put it this way, for legal purposes, if I have to break down a call and it shows that a call came in at this time, but it wasn't dispatched until this time, it's not relevant if they're not on the same synchronized time, right? So if we say, oh, well, it took you 5 minutes to dispatch the call, did it really take 5 minutes to dispatch the call through the CAD? Or could there be a discrepancy because this clock and this clock are not matching up? So just a couple of more things that are listed as Annie and Allie investigation reference notes, a few different types of calls you should be aware of. Time differences can result in penalties. Yeah, somebody sent that in to the host. Yeah, absolutely. Time differences can result in penalties that shouldn't exist. Somebody shared a call with me the other day that it was in the news, and there's investigations over a call that took a minute to be dispatched. I need to look a little bit more into the particular situation. I'm sure there's more to the story. However, are we looking at a piece of paper that says it took a minute? What are we basing that information on? Right? Is it a recording? Because at the end of the day, all of those clocks need to be synchronized. Otherwise, somebody's got to sit down and go, this clock says this clock says this clock says this. This is actually this time, this time, this time. And I don't think a lot of people understand that or do that. So it is beneficial to have a synchronized net clock. So a couple of these anti-alley investigative type things is when we have an anonymous call come into the 911 center. So behind every 911 trunk is actually a 10-digit phone number. And they try not to reuse those phone numbers. But it's when somebody actually just calls that 10-digit number and it comes right into the 911 center through the 911 system, but it's not going to come in with any information because it's not actually coming through the 911 system. The call is not processed by the selective router. And this happens, again, while they try to not reuse phone numbers, it may be a situation where the number gets reused or somebody transposes a number. So usually we don't see too many of these, or we might not even know that that's how that call came in. There's no display. Now, simply put, it's that. There's nothing on the display. So a call comes in, there's no display, but it's not the same as no record found. No record found, it could be an issue somewhere along the service line. It could be a recent telephone number change. There are various reasons why no record found will be coming up on your screen. But understand that when we talked about discrepancy reports last week, when we have a no record found, we need to be filling out a discrepancy report for that particular call because it shouldn't be coming through the system with no record found. This is just one of those examples. I want to show you here on the screen, no record found, but I also want to show you the benefits of the Rapid SOS portal. When you have a no record found call, if you are logged into the portal, you may actually get to see that information that is relevant to that call. This particular call was an agency in Kentucky. When I was working with a particular agency, they sent me both a screenshot of the no record found, but also the actual call. This was an erratic operator versus an erotic operator. And then shortly after, they had a second call come in, no record found, and this was a medical emergency. And I am always adamant about being logged into the portal because if this was somebody who couldn't speak, and for whatever reason, that information, so in this case, I think if I remember correctly, it was a tower issue that had to be resolved and was the reason why the calls were coming in with no record found. If that person couldn't speak, you got nothing. You got no phone number, you got no mapping, you got no record, you got nada. So always be logged into that Rapid SOS portal, if even just for this case right here. Because if you're only relying on an integration to the emergency platform through Rapid SOS, in this case, there's nothing to be queried, so you're not going to get anything back. That's my soapbox. Party lines, back in the old day, it does have the definition of a party line where people were basically all on the same phone number. And then a dual service. A dual service is when you have a phone service that goes to two different locations. So I can dial the number from my phone here and it's going to go to two different locations. And that happens when somebody may have a business or their business line and their home line, or they're moving to a new location and they want to make sure they have access to those phone numbers. So there's that. So with that, went a little longer than expected. My goal was to be done by 4:00, but had a few mishaps today. But nonetheless, take that information for what it's worth. If nobody has any questions, I'll go ahead and put up the contact information with a quick contact form there. If you do have any questions, feel free to send them. Make sure you like and follow me on social media so I can get more sponsors to do more fun things. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you. Have a great weekend if it is, in fact, your weekend.